Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiant, watching the stars streak past as his ship moved through hyperspace. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the control panels. Jake had been a starship captain for 8 years, but he had never seen the galaxy in such chaos. "Captain, we're getting another emergency broadcast," said Amy Chun from her communications station. Her voice was tired. They had been hearing distress calls for weeks now, and each one seemed worse than the last. "Put it through," Jake said. Settling into his captain's chair, the main screen flickered to life, showing a blue-skinned alien with large eyes. The creature's skin looked pale and sick. "This is Commander Veltar of the Nerathi colony ship Ocean's Dream. We are carrying 15,000 civilians, including 4,000 children. The void sickness has reached our home system. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help. Our people are dying." The transmission cut to static. Amy turned to look at Jake with sad eyes. "That's the 4th call today, Captain. All from different species." Dr. Lisa Hayes, the ship's chief medical officer, stepped onto the bridge. She was holding a datapad and looked worried. "Captain, I've been studying the reports about this. Void sickness. It's spreading faster than anything I've ever seen. The affected aliens start showing symptoms within hours, and most die within 3 days." "What about humans?" Jake asked. "Any cases among our people?" "None," Lisa said. "Not a single human has gotten sick, even those who were in direct contact with infected aliens. It's like we're completely immune." Security Chief Ryan Torres, a big man with dark hair, frowned. That seems too convenient. Why would a disease affect every alien species, but skip humans completely? Before Lisa could answer, the ship's computer announced an incoming priority message. Amy pressed some buttons, and the image of Admiral Brooks appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and a stern expression. "Captain Morrison, you are to return to Earth immediately. All human ships in the outer sectors have been ordered to evacuate. The Galactic Council has declared the affected systems to be quarantine zones. No ship is allowed to enter or leave those areas." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Admiral, what about the refugees? There are millions of aliens trapped in those systems." Admiral Brooks' face remained hard. "That's not our problem, Captain. The Council has made their decision. The infected species are to be left in quarantine until the disease runs its course. Earth Command agrees with this decision. You have 24 hours to reach the evacuation point." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake stared at the blank screen, feeling sick. Ryan spoke first. "Captain, those are our orders. We should head home." "Our orders are to abandon millions of innocent people to die," Jake said. Quietly, First Officer Kate Sullivan, a blonde woman in her 30s, stepped forward. "Sir, I understand how you feel, but we can't save everyone. If we try to help and get infected ourselves, we'll just make things worse." "But we're immune," Lisa said. "I just told you, humans don't get this disease." Kate shook her head. "We don't know that for sure. Maybe we just haven't been exposed long enough." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge, looking out at the stars. He thought about all the distress calls they had received. He thought about the children in those calls, the families torn apart, the entire civilizations facing extinction, while the galaxy's most powerful species simply walked away. "Amy, are we still receiving that Nerathi distress call?" he asked. "Yes, sir. They're about 6 hours away at maximum speed." "Plot a course for their location." The bridge fell silent. Kate stepped closer to Jake. "Captain, that's a direct violation of our orders. Earth Command will court-martial you." Jake turned to face his crew. He saw doubt in some of their faces, but also hope in others. "The Galactic Council is abandoning these people because they're afraid. Earth Command is following along because they don't want to rock the boat. But we're here right now with the power to help. What if it's a trap? Ryan asked. What if someone created this disease on purpose? And helping these aliens is exactly what they want us to do. Lisa looked up from her datapad. I've been thinking the same thing. The way this disease targets specific genetic markers in alien DNA but leaves humans completely alone. It doesn't feel natural. All the more reason to investigate, Jake said. If someone is using biological weapons to commit genocide, the galaxy needs to know. Amy turned in her chair. Captain, I'm getting another transmission. It's from a Zephyrian colony ship. Put it through. The screen showed a tall, crystal-like being. Its usually bright surface was dull and cracked. Human vessel, this is Elder. Crystal Song of Dawn. Our ship carries 50,000 of my people, including 20,000 younglings. We have been denied entry to every safe port. Our life support systems are failing. If someone does not help us soon, we will all die in the cold of space. The transmission ended. Jake looked around at his crew. That's 50,000 people. 50,000 children who will die if we follow our orders and go home. Kate crossed her arms. And what happens when Earth Command finds out? What happens? To our careers? Our families back home? I don't know, Jake admitted. But I know what happens if we do nothing. We become the kind of people who can watch genocide happen and do nothing to stop it. He walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. Amy, open a channel to the Zephyrian ship. Tell them we're coming to help. Ryan, I want security teams ready for anything. Lisa, prepare the medical bay for alien patients. Kate, start calculating. How many refugees we can fit on this ship? Kate stared at him. You're really doing this? We're really doing this, Jake said. Computer, change course for the Zephyrian colony ship. Maximum speed. As the Defiant changed direction, Jake felt a mix of fear and determination. He was about to risk everything he had worked for, everything his crew had worked for. But as he thought about those 50,000 children floating helpless in space, he knew he was making the right choice. The galaxy had turned its back on the innocent. It was time for humanity to show what they were really made of. The Defiant's cargo bays had never been so crowded. Jake Morrison walked through the converted living spaces, watching human crew members work alongside tall, crystal-like Zephyrians. The aliens moved slowly, their normally bright surfaces still, dull from sickness, but they were alive. That was what mattered. Captain, Dr. Lisa Hayes called out as she approached him. Her medical uniform was wrinkled and stained. She had been working non-stop for 3 days since they rescued the Zephyrian colony ship. I need to show you something important. Jake followed her to the medical bay. Inside, several Zephyrian younglings lay on modified beds while human medics monitored their health. The young aliens looked like small glass sculptures, but their surfaces were starting to show the first hints of their natural glow returning. The good news is that my theory was right, Lisa said, pulling up data on her computer screen. Humans are completely immune to the void sickness. I've tested it every way I can think of. The disease simply cannot affect our biology. And the bad news? Jake asked, though he could tell from her expression that there was bad news. This isn't a natural disease, Captain. I've run every test I know, and the genetic markers are too precise, too targeted. Someone engineered this weapon to kill specific alien species while leaving others untouched. Jake felt cold despite the warmth. Air in the medical bay. You're saying this is deliberate genocide? That's exactly what I'm saying. Whoever created this weapon chose which species would live and which would die, and they made sure humans wouldn't be affected. Before Jake could respond, his communicator beeped. Captain to the bridge immediately, came Amy Chun's urgent voice. Jake hurried to the bridge, where he found his crew clustered around the main screen. Amy looked up as he entered. "Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from Earth Command and the Galactic Council. None of them sound happy. Show me Earth Command first." Admiral Brooks appeared on screen, and her face was red with anger. "Captain Morrison, you have directly violated your orders and put the entire human race at risk. You are hereby relieved of command and ordered to return to Earth for court-martial. Commander Sullivan is now in charge of your vessel." The message ended. Jake turned to look at Kate Sullivan, his first officer. She was staring at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. "Kate, I'm sorry, Jake," she said quietly, "but I have to follow orders. Earth Command is right. We're risking too much." "Security." Chief Ryan Torres stepped forward. "With respect, Commander Sullivan, I disagree. What we're doing here is right." Kate looked surprised. "Ryan, you were against this mission from the beginning." "I was," Ryan admitted. "But that was before I saw the younglings. Before I watched our people working alongside aliens to save lives. These aren't enemies or threats. They're just people who need help." Chief Engineer Ben Parker, a quiet man, who rarely spoke up during command decisions, cleared his throat. "Commander, I've been talking to the Zephyrian engineers. They've shown me things about their technology that could help both our species. We're not just saving lives here, we're building bridges." Kate looked around the bridge at her fellow officers. "This is mutiny." "No," Jake said calmly. "This is a choice. You can follow Earth Command's orders and take this ship home, or you can stay and help save innocent lives. I won't stop you either way." Amy Chun turned in her chair. "Captain, I'm getting another distress call. It's from a Thakari hive ship. Put it through." The screen showed an insect-like alien with multiple arms and large compound eyes. Its normally shiny exoskeleton looked cracked and dry. "Human vessel, this is Hive Mother clicking of many voices. Our scouts report that you helped the Crystal People. We carry 100,000 of our kind, including 50,000 larvae. The burning sickness spreads through our ship. We will die in 2 days without help." The transmission ended. Jake turned to Kate. 100,000 lives, Kate. Can you walk away from that?" Kate stood silent for a long moment, then sighed. "Computer, relay a message to the Thakari ship. Tell them we're coming to help." She looked at Jake. "I still think we're making a mistake, but I can't abandon those children." Over the next several hours, the Defiant worked with the Thakari hive ship to transfer the most critically ill aliens to the human vessel. Jake watched his crew adapt to working with the insect-like beings, despite their very different appearance and behavior. Amy looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm detecting 3 more human ships approaching our position." Jake felt his heart race. "Are they Earth Command vessels?" "No, sir. They're broadcasting civilian registration codes. The UHS Guardian, UHS Sanctuary, and USS Hope." The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission. A middle-aged man with graying hair appeared. "Captain Morrison, this is Captain Steve Miller of the UHS Guardian. We heard about what you're doing out here. We'd like to help." Jake couldn't hide his surprise. "Captain Miller, you're risking your career by being here." Steve smiled. "My daughter asked me what I did during the great alien dying. I didn't want to tell her I followed orders and did nothing. We've got medical supplies and room for refugees." 2 more transmissions came in from the other ships. Both captains said similar things. They had heard about Jake's mission and wanted to join the rescue effort. Within hours, the small fleet was coordinating the rescue of over 200,000 alien refugees. Lisa approached Jake as he stood watching the rescue operations. "Captain, I've been analyzing the disease samples we've collected. I think I know who might be behind this. Tell me." The genetic targeting is too sophisticated for most species to develop on their own. But there are records of similar research being conducted by a faction within the Hegemony Alliance. They call themselves the Purists. Jake had heard of the Purists. They were a radical group that believed only certain species deserved to advance to higher levels of galactic civilization. Most people thought they were just extremists with no real power. You think the Purists created the void sickness? I think they created it as the first step in a plan to eliminate what they consider inferior species. And I think they expected the galactic community to abandon the victims, just like what's happening now. Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Ryan's voice came over the intercom. All hands to battle stations. We have Hegemony warships approaching. Jake rushed to the bridge, where Amy was tracking 3 large ships moving toward their position. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Captain, they're ordering us to surrender the alien refugees or be destroyed. Jake settled into his captain's chair. Open a channel to the other human ships. Tell them what we're facing. Captain Miller's face appeared on screen, along with the captains of the other 2 vessels. We're with you, Jake, Miller said. These people are under our protection now. Jake looked around his bridge at his crew. Kate gave him a nod. Ryan was checking weapon systems. Amy was coordinating with the other ships. Ben was making sure their engines were ready for battle. Amy, open a channel to the Hegemony ships. A proud-looking alien with blue skin and silver markings appeared on screen. Human vessels, you are harboring disease carriers and violating galactic quarantine laws. Surrender the infected beings immediately. Jake stood up. These people are refugees seeking help. They're sick and dying, and we're providing medical aid. Your interference prolongs their suffering and risks spreading the contamination. Stand down. No, Jake said simply. These people are under human protection now. If you want them, you'll have to go through us. The alien's expression turned angry. So be it. You have chosen to stand with the diseased and dying. You will share their fate. The transmission ended. Jake turned to his crew. All ships, prepare for battle. We didn't come this far to give up now. As the Hegemony warships moved closer, Jake thought about the hundreds of thousands of refugees depending on them. The galaxy had written these people off as acceptable losses. But humanity had made a different choice. They had chosen to stand and fight for those who couldn't fight, for themselves. The first energy blasts lit up the darkness of space. The real war was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the first battle, and Admiral Jake Morrison barely recognized the fleet under his command. What had started as 4 human ships was now 30 vessels of different sizes and designs. Some were human-built, others were alien ships whose crews had chosen to join the rescue mission rather than abandon their own people. Jake stood in the command center of his flagship, the UHS Defiant, looking at a tactical display showing their current operation. They were evacuating a Narathi colony world before the Hegemony could arrive to destroy it. The aquatic aliens were loading their people onto transport ships as fast as they could. Admiral, the last transport is lifting off, reported Colonel Lisa Brooks, who had joined the fleet 3 months ago. She was a former military strategist who had resigned her commission to join the rescue effort. 2 million Narathi civilians are now safe. Dr. Lisa Hayes approached with her daily medical report. Her hair was now streaked with gray from the yaw. Stress of treating dozens of different alien species, but her eyes still held determination. We've successfully treated over 300,000 patients now, Admiral. The mortality rate among rescued aliens has dropped to less than 2%. Any progress on finding a permanent cure? Jake asked. Some, working with the Zephyrian scientist Crystal Song of Dawn and the Fakari, bioengineered chittering of swift thoughts. We've identified how the weapon targets specific genetic sequences. But whoever created this keeps evolving it. Every time we develop a treatment for one strain, a new version appears. Captain Steve Miller's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we've got hegemony ships dropping out of hyperspace. Looks like a full battle group. Jake moved to the command chair. All ships, this is Morrison. Prepare for battle. Civilian transports, get behind our defensive line. The battle began as soon as the hegemony ships were in range. Energy beams and missiles flew through space as the two fleets engaged. Jake watched his mixed force of human and alien ships work together, each species contributing their unique strengths to the fight. The Zephyrian vessels used their advanced energy shields to protect the more vulnerable ships. The Thakari fighters moved in complex swarm patterns that confused enemy targeting systems. The Nerethi ships, designed for underwater combat, used unusual maneuvers that caught the hegemony forces off guard. Admiral, Amy Chun called out from her communication station. I'm receiving a transmission on a secured channel. Someone claiming to be from the Ethereal Collective. Jake had heard of the Ethereal Collective. They were an ancient species that rarely involved themselves in galactic politics. Put them through. The main screen showed a being that looked almost like a living cloud of silver mist. Its voice was soft and musical. Admiral Morrison, I am Speaker of Hidden Truths. We have been watching your efforts with great interest. Are you here to help or stop us? Jake asked. To help, though we must be careful. There are those in the hegemony who would destroy us if they knew we were supporting you. We bring information about your true enemy. During a brief pause in the battle, Jake met with the ethereal representative on a neutral asteroid. The beings' form shifted like smoke as it spoke. The faction you face calls itself the Purist Movement. They have infiltrated the highest levels of hegemony leadership. Their goal is not simply to contain the void sickness, but to use it to eliminate 43 species they consider genetically inferior. Jake felt sick. 43 species? That's billions of lives. Indeed. They have spent decades preparing this plan. The weapon was designed to target specific genetic markers while leaving their preferred species untouched. They did not expect humans to be immune, nor did they expect your species to interfere with their extermination program. What can you tell us about stopping them? The Ethereal's form brightened. They maintain research facilities where they develop new strains of the weapon. If these facilities were destroyed, their ability to evolve the disease would be severely limited. We can provide you with the locations. Jake studied the data the Ethereal provided. The facilities were heavily defended and located deep in hegemony. Space. This would be a suicide mission. Perhaps. But consider the alternative. In 1 year, they plan to release a final strain of the weapon that will kill every targeted species simultaneously. 43 civilizations will die in a single day. When Jake returned to his fleet, he called a meeting of all ship commanders. The conference room was crowded with humans and aliens working together to plan their next move. Captain Danny Wright, a young officer who commanded one of the newest ships in the fleet, spoke first. Admiral, my crew and I volunteer for the mission. The UHS Swift can get in and out faster than most ships. Crystal Song of Dawn, the Zephyrian scientist, pulsed with worried light. The facilities will be defended by automated systems designed specifically to kill intruders. This is extremely dangerous. Hive Mother Clicking of Many Voices, who now served as the Thakari representative, gestured with multiple arms. My warriors are bred for dangerous missions. We will provide assault troops. Captain Steve Miller leaned forward. We'll need to coordinate simultaneous strikes on all facilities. If even one survives, they can continue their work. Jake looked around the room at the beings who had become not just allies, but friends. This isn't just about stopping the Purists anymore. If we succeed, we'll have proof of their genocide program. Evidence we can present to the entire galaxy. Dr. Hayes pulled up medical data on her screen. I've been analyzing the weapon's design with our alien colleagues. If we can capture some of their research, we might be able to develop a universal cure, something that would protect all species from future biological weapons. Colonel Brooks spread tactical maps across the table. I've identified 12 facilities that appear to be primary research centers. We'll need at least 20 ships for a coordinated strike, assuming we can get past their defenses. Over the next several days, the fleet prepared for their most dangerous mission yet. Jake watched human engineers work with alien technicians to modify their ships for stealth infiltration. He saw soldiers from different species training together, learning to coordinate their different fighting styles. The night before the mission, Jake walked through the ship's corridors. He passed the quarters where Zephyrian families lived alongside human crew members. He saw Fakari engineers teaching human children how to play their complex mathematical games. He watched Narathi poets sharing their aquatic art forms with fascinated human audiences. This was what they were fighting for. Not just to save lives, but to preserve the possibility of different species living and working together in peace. Amy found him in his quarters, looking out at the stars. Admiral, all ships report ready for the mission. Jake nodded. Amy, if something happens to me tomorrow, I want you to know that these past months have been the most important work I've ever done. Nothing's going to happen, sir. We're going to stop the purists, save those 43 species, and show the galaxy what cooperation can accomplish. Jake smiled. I hope you're right. The next morning, the fleet split into 12 attack groups, each targeting a different research facility. As Jake's group approached their target, he thought about how much had changed since that first day when they decided to help the Zephyrian refugees. They had started as one ship trying to save 50,000 aliens. Now they were a true alliance of multiple species, working together to save billions of lives and preserve the diversity that made them do. Galaxy worth protecting. The real test was about to begin. 2 years had passed since the first rescue mission, and the war had changed everything. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Haven Station, a massive asteroid base that had become the heart of the resistance movement. The station was hidden deep in the Serpent Nebula, where sensor interference made it nearly impossible for hegemony forces to find them. The base buzzed with activity as beings from dozens of species worked together. Human engineers collaborated with Zephyrian crystal shapers to build new weapons. Thakari bioscientists worked alongside Narathi healers to treat the wounded. It was a sight that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Admiral, we have a priority transmission from Agent Glasswalker in Shadows, announced Lieutenant Laura Martinez, who had joined the intelligence division 6 months earlier. Jake nodded. Glasswalker was one of their best spies, a Zephyrian who could change the opacity of his crystal body to become nearly invisible. He had been undercover in hegemony space for 3 months, gathering information about purist operations. The holographic display showed Glasswalker's familiar crystal form, but his surface was dim with worry. Admiral Morrison, I have discovered something terrible. The purists are not just planning to release a final weapon. They have already begun the process. Jake felt his blood turn cold. What do you mean? I infiltrated a research facility on Kepler-7. They have developed what they call the final solution, a weapon that will kill all 43 targeted species simultaneously. The release is scheduled for 60 days from now, during the Festival of Unity. Dr. Lisa Hayes, who had been working nearby, rushed over to the communication panel. Glasswalker, do you have details about how this weapon works? Yes, Doctor. Unlike the previous versions that spread through contact, this weapon will be released into the hyperspace communication network. Every species that uses galactic communications will be exposed instantly. Death will come within hours for the targeted species. Jake stared at the display in horror. The Festival of Unity was the galaxy's largest celebration, when billions of beings from hundreds of worlds would be using the communication networks to share in the festivities. It was the perfect time for a mass extinction event. Captain Danny Wright, who had recently returned from a reconnaissance mission, stepped forward. Glasswalker, where is this weapon being prepared? The primary facility is on Titan Prime, the purest stronghold in the Vega system. It is defended by a fleet of warships and planetary defense systems. Getting close will be nearly impossible. After the transmission ended, Jake called an emergency meeting of the Resistance leadership. The conference room filled with familiar faces, human officers who had risked everything to join the cause, and alien allies who had become trusted. Friends and colleagues. Colonel Lisa Brooks spread intelligence reports across the table. Titan Prime is one of the most heavily defended worlds in hegemony space. They have orbital defense platforms, automated weapon systems, and a garrison of 50,000 troops. Captain Steve Miller, whose hair had turned completely gray from the stress of the war, shook his head. Even if we brought our entire fleet, we'd never get through those defenses. Crystal Song of Dawn, the Zephyrian scientist, pulsed with dim light. Perhaps we do not need to destroy the facility. If we could capture their research data, we might be able to develop a countermeasure. Hive Mother, clicking of many voices, gestured with her 4 arms. My warriors could attempt an infiltration mission, but the casualties would be enormous. Jake studied the tactical displays, trying to find a solution that didn't involve sending thousands of people to their deaths. What about the purest leadership? If we could capture someone high-ranking, someone who knows the technical details. Dr. Hayes looked up from her medical scanner. Admiral, I've been analyzing the biological data Glasswalker provided. This new weapon is incredibly sophisticated. It would take years to develop a proper countermeasure. But there might be another way. Tell me. The weapon targets specific genetic markers, just like the previous versions. But I've discovered something interesting about human immunity. We don't just resist the weapon. Our blood actually contains compounds that can neutralize it. Captain Wright leaned forward. You're saying human blood is like a cure? More than that. If we could synthesize the protective compounds and distribute them through the same communication networks the purists plan to use, we could immunize the entire galaxy before they release their weapon. Colonel Brooks frowned. That would require access to the main communication hub on Central Station. It's even more heavily defended than Titan Prime. Jake stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into the nebula. In the distance, he could see the lights of refugee ships, vessels carrying survivors from dozens of worlds that had been destroyed by the purists. Each ship represented thousands of lives that depended on the resistance movement. We'll do both missions, he said finally. One team will infiltrate Titan Prime to capture a purist leader and gather intelligence. Another team will assault Central Station to gain access to the communication networks. Amy Chun, who had been quiet during the meeting, spoke up. Admiral, that's dividing our forces when we're already outnumbered. If either mission fails. If we do nothing, 43 species die in 60 days, Jake replied. We have to try. Over the next week, the Resistance prepared for their most desperate gambit yet. Jake watched as volunteers from every species stepped forward to join the missions. Human soldiers trained alongside Thakari warriors and Zephyrian commandos. Engineers from different worlds worked together to modify ships and weapons for the assault. The mission to Titan Prime would be led by Captain Wright and Glasswalker in Shadows. Their job was to capture General Vorthketh, the purist leader, who had designed the final solution. The team would include elite soldiers from every allied species. The assault on Central Station would be commanded by Colonel Brooks and Captain Miller. They would need to fight their way through the station's defenses and hold the communications center long enough for Dr. Hayes to upload the immunity formula. Jake would coordinate both missions from Haven Station, knowing that he was sending his closest friends into almost certain death. The night before the missions launched, Jake walked through the station's corridors one last time. He passed the school where human and alien children learned together, the medical bay where Dr. Hayes had saved countless lives, the workshops where species that had never met before the war now created wonders together. He found Crystal Song of Dawn. In the Crystal Garden, a beautiful space where Zephyrian refugees had recreated a piece of their lost homeworld. The alien scientist's surface glowed with soft, sad light. "You are afraid we will fail," Crystal Song observed. "I'm afraid of the cost of success," Jake admitted. "Even if we win, how many of our people will die tomorrow? Admiral Norrison, before you saved our colony ship, my people believed we would die forgotten in the darkness of space. Instead, we have become part of something greater. We have learned that different species can work together, can trust each other, can become family. Even if we die tomorrow, that knowledge will survive." Jake smiled sadly. "I hope the galaxy remembers what we tried to do here." "The galaxy will remember," Crystal Song replied. "But more importantly, the survivors will carry this spirit forward. The purists wanted to create a galaxy of genetic purity. Instead, they have created a galaxy that knows the strength of diversity." The next morning, the two strike teams departed Haven Station. Jake watched their ships disappear into hyperspace, carrying with them the hopes of billions of beings across the galaxy. In 60 days, the purists planned to commit the greatest genocide in galactic history. But first, they would have to deal with a small group of humans and aliens who had decided that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The galaxy held its breath as news of the resistance mission spread across every inhabited world. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Haven Station, surrounded by tactical displays showing the positions of fleets across 3 star systems. The evidence Captain Wright's team had captured from General Vorthketh was now being broadcast on every free communication channel in the galaxy. "Admiral, we're receiving confirmations from 47 different worlds," Amy Chun reported from her communications station. "The proof of the purist genocide program is spreading faster than we hoped." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the main tactical display. The hegemony fleet was moving toward Central Station, where Colonel Brooks and her team were, still fighting to maintain control of the communication networks. They had been under siege for 6 hours, and their situation was desperate. Dr. Lisa Hayes approached with her final status report. Her face was tired but determined. "Admiral, the immunity formula has been successfully uploaded to the Galactic Communication Network. Every species targeted by the purists should now have protection against the final solution weapon. How effective will it be?" Jake asked. "Based on our tests, it should provide complete immunity for 98% of the targeted populations. The remaining 2% will have significantly reduced symptoms. Instead of 43 species facing extinction, we're looking at maybe a few thousand casualties." Jake felt some of the weight lift from his shoulders, but he knew the battle wasn't over. "What's the status of our fleet?" Captain Steve Miller's weathered face appeared on the communication screen from his ship, the UHS Guardian. "Admiral, we've got ships arriving from across the galaxy. The Ethereal Collective just brought a battle group. 3 species from the Outer Rim have sent support fleets. Even some hegemony member species are breaking ranks to join us." Jake looked at the tactical display and couldn't believe what he was seeing. The small resistance fleet of 30 ships had grown to over 200 vessels, representing dozens of different species. It was the largest multi-species alliance in galactic history. "Sir?" Amy called out urgently. Priority transmission from Central Station. It's Colonel Brooks. The main screen showed Lisa Brooks in battle-damaged armor, standing in what was left of Central Station's command center. Behind her, Jake could see human and alien soldiers working together to hold defensive positions against hegemony assault. Troops, Admiral, we've completed the mission. The immunity formula is spreading through the network, and we've gathered enough evidence to expose the entire Purist conspiracy. But we're running out of time. The main Purist fleet is approaching, and they're bringing something big. Jake's blood ran cold. What kind of big? A dreadnought-class vessel called the Extinction. Our intelligence says it's carrying an evolved version of the final solution weapon. If they can't kill the targeted species through the communication networks, they're planning to visit every populated world and release the weapon directly. Jake felt his heart sink. Even with the immunity formula spreading through the galaxy, a direct release of the weapon on planetary surfaces could still kill millions. How long do we have? The Extinction will reach the first target world in 18 hours. Admiral, this ship is massive, bigger than anything we've ever faced. It's going to take everything we have to stop it. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in tense silence. Jake looked around at his staff, humans and aliens, who had become family over the past 2 years of fighting together. Crystal Song of Dawn pulsed with worried light. Admiral Morrison, perhaps we should evacuate the target worlds instead of engaging such a powerful vessel. There are billions of people on those worlds, Jake replied. We couldn't evacuate them all in time, and the Purists would just follow them wherever they went. Hive Mother, clicking of many voices, gestured with her forearms. Then we fight. My warriors are ready to defend the innocent, no matter the cost. Dr. Hayes stepped forward with her scanner. Admiral, I've been thinking about the immunity formula. If we could get it directly into the Extinction's weapon systems, it might neutralize their entire supply of the biological weapon. That would require someone to board the ship and reach their weapon storage. Jake said. Captain Danny Wright's voice came through the communication system from his ship near Central Station. Admiral, my team and I volunteer for the boarding mission. We've gotten good at infiltrating Purist facilities. Jake made his decision. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We're going to intercept the Extinction before it reaches any populated worlds. I won't lie to you. This will be the hardest fight we've ever faced. But remember what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right of different species to exist together in peace. The next few hours were a blur of preparation as the Resistance fleet moved to intercept the massive Purist dreadnought. Jake transferred his flag to the UHS Defiant for the battle, wanting to be in the thick of the fighting with his people. When the Extinction dropped out of hyperspace, Jake couldn't help but stare at its size. The ship was nearly 10 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and surrounded by a fleet of escort vessels. It looked like a moving fortress, designed to bring death to entire worlds. All ships, attack pattern Delta, Jake ordered. Prioritize the escort vessels first, then focus everything on creating an opening for the boarding teams. The battle began with a massive exchange of energy weapons and missiles. The Allied fleet attacked in coordinated waves, with each species contributing their unique strengths. Zephyrian ships used their energy shields to protect the more vulnerable vessels. Thakari fighters swarmed the enemy escorts in complex patterns. Narathi vessels used their underwater combat experience to make unpredictable maneuvers through the debris field. Despite their efforts, the Extinction's weapons were devastating. Jake watched in horror as ship after ship was destroyed or crippled by the dreadnought's massive cannons. The UHS Guardian took a direct hit, and Captain Miller's ship spun out of control before exploding in a burst of light. "Steve?" Jake shouted, but there was no response from the Guardian. "Admiral," Amy reported with tears in her eyes, "Captain Miller's escape pod was destroyed. There are no survivors." Jake felt rage and grief wash over him, but he forced himself to focus on the mission. Steve had died protecting billions of innocent lives. Jake wouldn't let that sacrifice be meaningless. "Annie, the extinction shields are down in Sector 7. Jake called to Captain Wright. "Take your boarding team and go." Wright's small assault ship darted through the chaos of battle and latched onto the extinction's hull. Jake watched the sea. Tactical display as Wright's team fought their way through the dreadnought's corridors, facing automated defenses and purist soldiers. The battle outside continued to rage. More ships were lost, but the Allied fleet was slowly wearing down the Yawn. Extinction's defenses. Jake realized with growing hope that they might actually win. "Admiral," Dr. Hayes called out from her medical station. "Captain Wright's team has reached the weapons storage area. They're uploading the immunity formula into the purest weapon supply." On the main screen, Jake could see explosions deep inside. The extinction as the immunity formula reacted with the biological weapons. The entire supply of genocide weapons was being neutralized, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The extinction, damaged beyond repair, began to break apart. Massive pieces of the dreadnought spun away into space, and Jake realized that Wright and his team were still aboard. "Annie, get your people out of there." Jake shouted into his communicator. Wright's voice crackled back through heavy static. "Negative, Admiral. The ship's too damaged." "But we did it. The weapon is completely neutralized. The targeted species are safe." The extinction exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking Captain Wright and his entire boarding team with it. Jake stared at the expanding debris field, feeling the weight of all the lives lost in the fight for galactic freedom. In the weeks that followed, the evidence gathered by the Resistance sparked a galaxy-wide revolution. The purist conspiracy was exposed, and their leaders were arrested or fled to the Outer Rim. A galactic council was dissolved and reformed with representatives from every species, including many that had been marked for extinction. Jake stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned UHS Unity, watching as the first mixed species colony ships departed for new worlds. The refugee populations that had been saved during the war were now establishing homes where humans, Zephyrians, Thakari, Nerethi, and dozens of other species would live and work together. Dr. Hayes joined him at the window. "Admiral, the final medical reports are in. Thanks to the immunity formula and our rescue efforts, we saved over 99% of the targeted populations. 43 species that were supposed to be extinct are now thriving." "What about our losses?" Jake asked quietly. "We lost good people," Lisa admitted. "Steve Miller, Danny Wright, thousands of others who believed in what we were doing. But Admiral, they died knowing that their sacrifice meant billions of others would live." Crystal Song of Dawn approached, her surface glowing with warm light. "Admiral Morrison, I wanted to thank you before my people depart for our new homeworld. You could have followed your orders and abandoned us to die. Instead, you chose to save us." "We all chose, yeah,